Hello, hello, me again. I hope you're doing well. I hope you can at least pull like a little bit of that joy or ease or rejuvenation or at least smile, something that you got from the long weekend last weekend into your week and that you just haven't been inundated with overwhelm or the to-do list or the many, many pulls on your time from all the different directions this week. So, we're coming off of summer. I know some of us have been off of summer for quite a few weeks now, but like now we're basically all off of summer. We're coming off of summer where hopefully there was a lot of play and joy for your students, for your own kids, for your nieces, for your nephews, for your nibblings, for your friends' kids. Like we do a lot of play when we are younger. And in fact, we deeply embrace this for our littlest of kids, right? There's play-based kindergarten, play-based nursery school, deep pedagogies of the importance of play and how that helps our brains develop, our bodies develop, our social emotional understanding and learning, as well as our fine motor and our gross motor and our academic capacities and things like that. There are so many benefits of play. I am a human who deeply loves play. Swinging on swings is still one of my most favorite things. You can ask Annette and the rest of the team, as I often will launch onto a swing wherever we are, different things. Play is important. It brings us joy and all of these things. Now, why am I going on and on and on about play? I get it. We're in school. It's time to get back to learning and get serious and all of those things. Well, playing with our data is actually really important too. And this is not just because we work with students, and play is an important part of students' development and the young mind's development, right? As I said, I, as an adult, still love to play, and it's still really good for me as it is for you. But playing is not always something we bring into our work with data. Oftentimes, actually, when we ask our students, they can say, working with data is boring, or it's a big black box, or it's just numbers, which, right? Okay, first off, I totally understand I'm a data nerd, so I would never say that data is boring. Secondly, not all data are numbers, which we all know. And thirdly, it should not be a black box. We should be breaking that apart and helping our students really understand what goes into working with data. And a huge part of working with data for professionals, aka humans who are paid to work with data every day in a myriad of different fields, because oh my goodness, data is everywhere and we're using it across basically the whole economy at this point. Maybe we should be using it more to make some of our decisions, but that is another topic of conversation. Data's here. We need to prepare our students for that workforce, for that reality, for the world, either as citizens or what they're going to use in their, in their day-to-day careers, things like that. But a huge part of working with data is playing with the data, exploring what's involved in the data, understanding what is there, what is not there, what measurements do we have, manipulating it not in a to adjust what people think or to cherry pick different pieces out of it, but manipulate as in, think of like Play-Doh, where we're like actually in it and we're changing the shape and we're adjusting things and we're taking pieces off and we're putting pieces on, all of those things. Like think back to those great Play-Doh days, right? We'd like squeeze it through different things and we'd roll it up, right? I mean, I'm speaking to all of us that played with Play-Doh. Now it's all these awesome like magic sand and all the other things that my kids had. Same difference, same, okay? We are physically, tactilely working with it, and it's the exact same for our data, even if it's in a spreadsheet, even if it's in a digital tool. We want to be in there, hands-on, eyes-on, looking at the data to get a sense of it, because this is how we kind of can ground into the like, oh, well, what data do I have? What could I say or what could I not say from these data? I can't make any claim about let me throw out an option. I can't make any claim about photosynthesis if I don't actually have any information about plants, right? Like, I can't make a claim about lifespan of mammals if I do not have average age or median age of different individuals within that species. I can't make a claim about the resistance if I do not have information about that of the spring, right? So we need those different components. I can't make a claim about the different nations that immigrants came from into Ellis Island unless I have that variable in my data set. And the only way that I'm going to know if I have that is by looking at the data in our data set and doing some initial exploration, tinkering, figuring out what is there, hands-on, and as I say, eyes-on, right? Because we don't actually often get to touch our data pieces, our cases, our values for our different variables. But there are sort of 4 key things that we can do while we are exploring the data as we're sitting in the space of trying to get a sense of it. What we are doing is called exploratory data analysis, and it was pioneered by John Tukey, or really sort of presented and brought up to the forefront for all of us in the 1970s as to why this is so important. So this is not a newfangled thing. It's not out of left field, but it is something we absolutely need to bring more of for our students into our classroom spaces. Because as I said, in the workforce, it's about 50% or more of what people do when they're working with data is this exploratory data analysis, getting a sense of the data, hands-on, eyes-on the data. Before we even get to what's a story I could tell from these data, how do I want to construct my visual to help me tell that story from the data, all those pieces. We got to do this exploratory data part. So how do we incorporate it in? What are different components we can bring in for our students? So let me pull this up so that you can see this as well. So 4 key things, sort of gain an understanding of the context of the data. Where are the data from? How are they collected? This is especially important if we did not collect the data ourselves. We need to get a sense of what is it? What's there? Where was it collected? How was it collected? Why was it collected? Different pieces like that. Even if we have collected the data ourselves, pausing to think about, well, why did we collect like the period for 10 swings of the pendulum as opposed to just 1 swing of the pendulum? Like, why did we count the time for all 10 and then divide by 10, right? This is the context of the data that we have. Second, evaluate and adjust the scales of the data. So, great example. Okay, so the swinging pendulum. This is literally something my son did last week in a science class. So, swinging pendulum. They put a weight on it, they let it swing, and they timed from when they released it to once it got back on the 10th time, okay? They wrote down the number of seconds. That was the most efficient way for them to collect the data for each trial as they were collecting the data. Great. But that doesn't actually tell them the period, what a single period of an out and back of the weight was on the pendulum. And so how the data were collected was the easiest way to collect it. But to be able to explore their question about, his group was looking at the influence of weight on the period of the of how long the period would last with the pendulum. So they needed to get down to an individual period. So this is a great example of like evaluate and adjust the scale. Here it wasn't a scale, but he needed to do a little bit to the data to get it to the point where that they could actually then go explore their question that they were collecting the data for. Okay, next step, use a quick look graphical representation of your data. Visual hypotheses, back of the envelope sketching of a graph, right? We talk about back of the envelope calculations. Back of the envelope, just sketch out what you think it might look like. before you jump in and spend a lot of time perfecting the axes and the colors and all of those different things, or fighting with Google Sheets to get the data to come out, the visualization to come out the way that you're hoping for. Just do a quick sketch just to get a gut check of like what's going on. And then finally, for our upper middle school students and high school students, we should be thinking about looking for the outliers. Now, for our elementary students and our earlier middle school students, we also should be thinking about what values are very different from the others. Just don't call them an outlier. Actually, we really shouldn't call them an outlier to high school. Again, side conversation about that. But thinking about which values are very similar and therefore we might say are typical of our group, which values are very different, so that we can look into those and be like, oh, what's going on with that value? What story might we be able to tell from that value, or those couple values that are pretty different than the other values? Not that they're bad and we get rid of them. There are opportunities for us to tell different stories from them, okay? So we can start to incorporate play and different exploratory components into or into our work with data by following those 4 steps. Okay, I am trying to get this to work. To be going kind of wonky right now in terms of adjusting my screen and live team, huh? Oh my goodness. Okay, let's bring this back. Okay, I'm not sure why that just went so crazy, but post in the notes from this live. Thanks for rolling with me while I can't figure out how to get the screen to work. Create opportunities. Give your Hello? Am I back? Can you see me? I have no idea when it cut out. Evidently my internet cut out. Okay. We're gonna call it. We've done well. Okay. Create opportunities in spaces and time for your students to explore with data. Hopefully some of that's gonna come through. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious. Good luck with your technology.